Hey, everybody, welcome in. It is David Sommers. It is time for Southeastern Rewind's Tell Me More. I am here with the Tennessee Stud, and he is waiting to answer 5 questions from the latest Studcast, now on Ron Fuller's new home on YouTube. The 5 questions on this edition of Tell Me More come from Studcast episode number 19. That's the 19th original Studcast episode. It's called Building Atlanta. Now, remember, as always, to find Southeastern Rewind on YouTube, subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders on when the greatest stories in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube, and they'll ring your bell so you know for certain when everything's going to happen. And be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind as well. All right, we got the Tennessee Stud on the line. Hey, Stud, what's going on? Happy Labor Day weekend.
Yes, sir, man. We're actually doing a little work on it right now, man. And great being with you again. Great being with everybody out there around the world. And thank you all for so much for your support. And wow, we just keep getting great questions. And I love this show here, man. I really have a good time on this one. And I'm kind of looking forward every time we get together, Dave, to finding out what the questions are going to be.
Hey, listen, every day is Labor Day in your life. You are one of the hardest working men in the wrestling business. I think James Brown was the hardest working man in show business. Ron Fuller, the Tennessee Stud, is the hardest working man in the wrestling business. That's for sure.
Before you leave that, I got one for you, man, right off the bat.
Uh-huh.
James Brown came to West Palm Beach, Florida, 1973.
Shut up.
And I sat down. I was in about the second or third row. Got my tickets from the guy that took care of managed the Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
And James Brown brought me on stage with him.
Shut up.
No, not kidding, man. He says, I got a wrestler out here. And he pointed me out and he said, Ron Fuller's here. Come on up here, Ron Fuller.
Oh, my God. Where had he seen you wrestle? Like there in Florida, or what was the deal?
Probably in Georgia, man. I started out, he's from old Macon. And I used to wrestle there when I just got started, my brother and I, man, in 1970. This was 3 years after that.
Wow. Were you wearing the cowboy hat?
No, I didn't wear the hat, man. I was kind of going incognito a lot, man.
The brothers behind you would have been like, hey, the big dude, the big dude, 8 feet tall with the hat, get rid of the hat. Come on.
Yeah.
So, hey, but that's awesome, man. The Godfather of Soul. That's cool. So,
I
that's
thought about it, man. You brought him up. But,
hey, save that.
Pretty cool moment, man. I'm glad he didn't ask me to sing or dance.
Whatever. Hey, but save that one. That sounds like a great story for the future. That's awesome right there. All right, so listen, as we get into number 19, let me ask you, because, listen, I know this thing has already gotten a great kickoff. Dinner with the Stud, Wednesday, October 13th at Calhoun's on the River in Knoxville. Les and you, cousin Jimmy Golden, this thing is going to be big, and you've already got a lot of folks that have committed to come hang out and get dinner with the Stud.
Yes, sir, man. I mean, I had no idea whether anybody was going to come have dinner with me, and I'm finding out that a lot of people want to have dinner with me. So, we're still a long way away. But the great thing about this beautiful restaurant, Calhoun's on the river, right there, man, within football throwing distance of the Neyland Stadium.
Yep.
It's got a huge banquet facility on the top. And they can expand it. So, I originally set up for a smaller number of people, but it appears to me, Dave, that they may have to push somebody else back out of the way and let the Stud and his dinner dates have a bigger part of that building. The 13th of October.
I mean, it could happen. It could happen. And listen, you can find out more at tnstud.com, tnstud.com. And there's also information on the Stud's Facebook page as well. It's only $30. That's the price of a couple of autographed photos of Les and you, right?
That's right, man. And, you pay that $30 and you not only get those photos for free, you get a buffet dinner at one of the best restaurants in America for free. You don't pay a penny for that. And you're also going to be able to be there for a live Studcast, followed by a 1-hour question and answer session from all of the fans out there. We're going to record that son of a gun, throw her on the YouTube, man. And you would stand up and ask your question, and you could be seen around the world, man, on YouTube.
Oh, that's cool. And you know what, Stud? This is amazing. Sometimes I eat 2 or 3 times a day.
No.
Yes, I do. Oh
man, that's why you're so fat, Dave.
Oh, my God, am I PHAT fat? Oh, my God. Thanks for that, Stud. So he just built me up and knocked me right back to reality. There we are.
No, I'm just ribbing, man. The funny thing is that you're not fat, man. So
I can't. I'm trying to imagine the Stud worried about, is the phone going to ring, or are people going to take me up on this deal? And then boom, the folks are reacting to the website. Well, is that the best way right now? Because you want to get in ahead of time. tnstud.com.
Yeah, go tnstud.com. You click on the Stud Store. Everything there for sale is the Stud Store, and I think it's the first thing that comes up, man. And you'll see that big, beautiful restaurant and the big bridge hanging right over the top of it, practically. And wow, I'm thinking it's going to be a really fun evening, man. And I'm looking forward to. We're going to do it again. We got a second date, and I'm going to announce that probably at this one. But we're. If it goes well, I want to try to. This is my gift to fans, man. This is a way for me to give back to my fans, and I want to do it in Knoxville. Heck, Dave, I'm thinking about taking the show on the road, man. May take it to other markets, because I'm getting people from a couple hundred miles away coming, and so I would like to do this for a lot of people.
And, no matter where I am, sometimes I eat 2 to 3 times a day. So
I think you already said that, Dave.
Okay, I couldn't remember. But
it's a buffet, Dave.
It's important, too. Oh, you bet.
You might be able to eat 2 meals worth there.
Yeah, the manager's going to be coming out. You go now. Time for you to go. You've been here 4 hours. Okay. All right. Hey, you want to answer some questions on the tell me more thing?
I sure do, man. Let's hear them.
All right. Hey, let's do it. Let's start with Bob Crouch, Dallas, Texas. He says, Fritz von Erich was mentioned as one of the stars that helped your father build Atlanta professional wrestling. Did you know at that time that he had 4 sons that were probably about the same age as you and Robert? What did you think might have happened? What do you think might have happened about 20 years later if the Fullers, Roy Lee Welch, and Jimmy Golden, as the Studs stable, had faced off with the Von Erichs?
This guy's a booker.
It sounds like it, right?
Geez, man, he's going to take Fritz and he's going to parlay it into 4 sons and me and my stable. And wow, I need to find out more about Mr. Crouch, was it, I think, man? Well, he's not crouching behind the couch, I can tell you that, man. He's stepping right out front. Fritz von Erich, he's a great subject in himself. Wow, what a tremendous athlete he was, and how impressive he was in the ring. I remember seeing him wrestle my dad in 1965 for the Georgia Heavyweight Championship in Atlanta Auditorium. And I feared for my dad. I mean, it was really, Fritz got the claw on him, man. Dad's all bloody, and it was like, wow, it was a hard fought deal, So Fritz was a big star wherever he went, and obviously he became a monster star in Dallas. And then he had 4 sons. Pretty much everybody knows the story. Pretty sad story, most of it. Yeah. But since Mr. Crouch asked about it, I think it would be something else. In fact, I just recently ran something on social media, on my Facebook page. I think I probably put it on Twitter as well. And it's a picture of me and David Von Erich with Jim Barnett standing between us.
I saw that. Was he it looked like he could have been an inch or two taller than you.
No. He was not quite my height. He's probably an inch, maybe shorter than me.
Okay.
But he's a big boy.
Maybe he had
He's
lifts on the boots.
6'8", 6'9".
Wow.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Okay.
You know? And I had tremendous comments. Wow, thousands and thousands of comments about that picture. You know, and kind of what happened through that whole deal. That was my first time to ever meet David Von Erich.
Wow.
And, he and I and our wives went out to dinner that night, and then we went to see Siegfried and Roy show. And the tickets came compliments of Jim Barnett.
Right. Right.
Jim Barnett, boy, he was really taking care of everybody. I can tell you that, man. When you went down to the NWA convention, if you needed tickets to anything, he could get them.
Wow.
So let's discuss real quickly here his little concept here about putting the stable against the Von Erichs. You know, and he might have got this. He might have seen this picture, man, as a matter of fact, because I think I said something about, David and I discussed it that night.
Wow, yeah.
Because, he really wasn't familiar with Jimmy. He knew I had a brother, but he really didn't know much about Jimmy. He didn't know about Roy Lee. Then, we started to, he's got 4 brothers. I got 4 family members, stable against him, and then strangely enough, man, as it works out, and poor David, he didn't make it long enough to actually work with Rob and Jimmy, but Rob and Jimmy went in there and worked with 2 of the brothers in Dallas many, many times, probably after I retired in 1988. 89, those boys were taking that trip from Nashville in one of those buses, the tour buses, like the Stars, Country Stars buses.
Right.
They were taking those buses from Nashville into Dallas and working with the Von Erichs, and then the Von Erichs would sometimes come back into Tennessee. So there was a little interaction between my family members, Rob and Jimmy especially, and against, I can't remember which ones the actual other brothers were that they were working with. But, this brings up another thought. Man, it just pops into my head, as an old-time booker. I mean, I can think of another family, by golly, that would have been right there with that group. The 4 Armstrong brothers.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
Think about that one, man.
Yeah. Wow. No
I'd
kidding.
like to book that one right there, man. The Von Erichs, the 4 Von Erichs against the 4 Armstrongs. Whoa!
You could
put Bob in one corner and Fritz in the other, by God.
You could get a few storylines out of that one. That's awesome. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So Mr. Crouch, great question, man. And, you ignited a little bit of the booker in me, man. I believe Rob and I and Jimmy and Roy, that would have been a good little deal. Gosh, the Armstrongs might be a hotter deal.
I got to ask you, because we're talking about the Von Erichs. I mean, it really was a sad ending for that family. And then when you look at your family, the guys that have been in the business for so long, you guys are still around. So what was the difference? What was happening in Texas that I don't know. It's just hard to I don't know how to ask this question, but what was the difference? You guys still hanging out with us?
Well, I think there was something about that family, man, that just it was a tragedy. The whole story of that family is just a real tragedy, and and sometimes is suicide, and in David's case, I don't think that was the actual case. He had a physical problem in Japan, probably wasn't taken care of in time to save his life. But, a couple of others committed suicide, and that kind of runs in wrestling sometimes.
Wow.
The Grahams, Eddie Graham and his son, Mike Graham. Actually, Eddie Graham's father committed suicide as well.
Wow.
3 generations. And I don't really know how to explain that phenomenon, but it was certainly a tragedy with the Von Erichs. What a talented family, man. And you got the one guy, the one that's living in Hawaii. He's doing great. Wow, good.
Yeah.
Thank God for him, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
I really love what's happening with him. You know, he's got it. He's got it figured out. You know, but wow. But a sad story, man. That whole family. That's
Indeed.
a really tragic story.
And having known you for a few years now, and had visited in your home and you in my home, and then we've had dinner before with Jerry, with Jimmy, with your brother, and everybody. I don't know. It just seems like a great group of folks. So it was a whole different thing that you had going in Knoxville.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It was a wonderful thing, man. There was a lot of camaraderie in those dressing rooms, and everybody having a good time. I never was in one of those Dallas dressing rooms. I don't know what that atmosphere was like.
Yeah.
But wow. You know,
I know
we didn't have a whole lot of suicide problems, I can tell you, man.
Yeah.
In Knoxville and in Pensacola and in my territories. Because everybody was just lit up all the time on fire because they were making good money and taking short trips and loving life, man.
Well, and supporting each other. I mean, because you guys were always riding together and then meeting up at the arenas together. So, and as you said, camaraderie is probably the key to the mental stability that you seem to maintain.
I think it really helped. It helped when you could be with other guys.
Yeah, no doubt.
On a steady basis and be in a dressing room in which everybody's having a good time.
Yeah,
that didn't happen a whole lot of places. Not many territories in the country ever experienced that.
Yeah, so I've gathered. But anyway, and I'm sure it's well documented, the story of the Von Erichs. All right, let's go to number 2. Danny Prescott, Marietta, Georgia, says, you talked about the old Atlanta Auditorium in this episode. Did you ever work there? And if so, what was your favorite match in that building in Atlanta?
Oh, wow, Danny, that's good. That's good questions, man. That takes me back instantly, man. I worked there when I started, Danny, in 1970. I'd finished at the University of Miami. I got home and I started in the ring in June. But I'd been training for a lot of years, and Rob had already started. He'd been wrestling for about a year when I got started. And so, I wrestled in that building a heck of a lot of times, man, thankfully. But between June of 1970 and into October of 1970, when I left there and went to Florida and spent the next 4 years in Florida, basically. I got 2 matches really off the top of my head when I think of that building in Atlanta, Georgia. The wrestling war in Atlanta was just beginning, 1972, and they sent me from Florida to Atlanta to wrestle Bill Watts. Bill Watts was the booker, and he was coming to Florida. And Mr. Wrestling 2 was becoming a sensation in Georgia. And Bill Watts didn't want to do a job for Mr. Wrestling number 2. He wouldn't let Wrestling 2 beat him.
Wow.
And they asked him, and he was down in Georgia. He's up in the Georgia territory. They asked him who would he put over? Who would he put the belt on? And then they were going to switch the belt, obviously, to Wrestling 2 because he's going to be there permanently. And Bill Watts says Ron Fuller. I'd never met Bill Watts.
Wow.
I'd never met him. And he had seen me wrestle, and he said, I'll do it for Ron Fuller. So they sent me from Florida into Atlanta, into the Atlanta Auditorium, sold out, huge crowd. And I beat Bill Watts for the Georgia Heavyweight Championship. 2 weeks later, I went back to defend it against Mr. Wrestling number 2, and he won the belt. He gave me the big knee, the whole deal, so and that's kind of the way things were done back in those days. If you had guys that didn't want to do business, is what we used to call it. If you didn't want to do business and you said, no, I don't want to lose to him or whatever it was, then you figured another way around it. You always got what you wanted to get done. If you owned the territory or if you were a booker of a territory, you just figured out another way to get it done. Those two matches, though, were absolutely phenomenal. I picked up Bill Watts in that match. He came off the ropes to hit me. I picked him up for a scoop slam.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so big, and I'd lost my balance, and he was running so hard that I staggered backwards, and we both went over the top rope on the concrete backwards.
Ooh, wow.
I dropped him basically from, and I'm pretty tall at 6'9". I dropped him from up there pretty good, straight down to the concrete, and came over on top of him.
Wow.
So, you would figure that he wouldn't be a friend of mine after that. He probably was like, oh my God, man, what did I pick this guy for? But anyway, we had a tremendous match. And then when I went back and wrestled wrestling too, we did something almost similar to that, and where he was a heel and I was a baby face. And wrestling too started out as a heel, and a damn good one. Really got all his heat. That's why he became such a superstar. Is usually when you're a great heel and you turn, you're going to be a big baby face. Mm-hmm. And so he grabbed me. I was on the apron of the ring, and I grabbed him he was out on the apron, and I reached over the ropes to get him, and he hooked me in a headlock, and he had something in his hand, and he smacked me with it on the way down. And then he couldn't get up. I finally staggered up, and he came and hit me with his big knee. And, that was history. He got the belt. I went back. I didn't go back to Florida to wrestle until the Omni. My dad and my brother and I started doing some shots in the Omni, probably the big building there in Atlanta, probably 4 or 5, maybe three years later than that. We were going back into the Omni, me and Rob and Dad.
Yeah, surely at some point you asked Bill Watts why he chose you. And had to have been some of your family.
Bill and I have always been friends for whatever reason. I really don't know why. But Bill brought me in there. When Bill came there, he wanted to wrestle partners with me. And we won the championship, the Florida Tag Championship, and Bill Watts turned on me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Bill Watts turned on me, and, in 1974, I probably wrestle Bill Watts 3 times a week in all the cities across Florida.
Wow.
With some of the biggest sellouts. Wow. That was the Dusty Rhodes days when Dusty had turned, and business was absolutely on fire. Maybe the hottest territory I ever saw for the summer of 1974.
No doubt. All right, let's go to a land down under where they have Vegemite sandwiches. Question number 3, Matthew Brooks, Brisbane, Australia. Matthew says, the episode opened with a comment from a Michael Cleary in Australia. He put you over big time. How did you know him, or did you know him?
Oh, boy, Matthew. Yeah, I did know him. And, he was actually a commentator on the professional wrestling program in Australia. You had a TV in Sydney, you had TV in Melbourne, and then once every 3rd week you went to Brisbane, and you did 3 TVs. And those Brisbane TVs are the TVs that got sent around to the rest of Australia. So he was doing the commentary on that Brisbane TV. He was a tremendous athlete. Fantastic rugby star, and he used to invite me to go and have a drink. Aussies love to drink. I can tell you that, man. There's no place on earth that drinks more beer than Australia. I don't believe.
Right.
And Michael used to ask me to go and have beer with him, and when we would go into any pub, it didn't make any difference where we went. Everybody in there knew him. He was a national superstar as a rugby player.
Wow.
and also as an athlete, as a racer, a runner, he was just a tremendous athlete. And later on in 1974, the year that I start my first wrestling company, Southeastern, he became he got elected in the New South Wales Parliament.
Wow.
So he became a politician, big time politician, remained a politician until 1991. So for 17 years, I guess, something like that.
Yeah.
And then, and I felt really close to him. I probably spent more time with him than any Aussie while I was there. And so when I wrote my book, when I wrote Brutus, there's an Aussie cop that's one of the main characters in that book. And guess what his name is?
Did you say a cop?
A cop.
Okay. Would it?
An Aussie policeman.
Right.
An Aussie policeman that gets that breaks up a big crime syndicate in Australia, and the Australian thugs are out to get him, and they send him and his wife and his little baby to America. They hide him in America.
Okay. Yeah.
They send him to Knoxville, Tennessee,
So
which is pretty well hiding anybody.
Did you name him after your buddy Michael?
That's exactly who I named him after. And I called that policeman, who becomes a policeman in Knoxville once he gets to Knoxville. And he's actually going to be one of the two guys responsible for tracking that line and finally getting him.
Wow.
And his name is Michael Cleary in the book.
Okay. So does Michael know this? Have you been in contact with Michael since the book came out?
No, I haven't. And I really don't know how to get in touch with him. He's no longer in the Parliament.
Yeah.
And if he's out there listening by some chance, Michael, I'd love to talk to you, man. Obviously I really cared for him to make him one of the main characters in my book, and name that guy after him. And for people that haven't read Brutus, I mean, he is a critical character in that movie. So is his wife and little boy, who are in one of the best scenes in that book. His wife and his little boy, when that lion gets them trapped inside a car in the middle of the national park.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Hey, that's cool. By the way, you can get Brutus at Amazon.com, Brutus novel, or tnstud.com. Click on Stud Store, and you can get an autographed copy at tnstud.com. All right, let's go to number 4. Mary Watson, Los Angeles, California. She says, you talked about Leo Garibaldi and his being a great booker. Were you aware he was also a very famous wrestler?
Oh, Mary, that's pretty prophetic of you, Mary. Actually, when I did the show, now this is number 19, so it's been almost 4 years ago at this point that I did this show. I really wasn't aware that Leo Garibaldi was also a very famous wrestler. Not only was he a tremendous booker, but he was a very famous wrestler too. So I Googled it, and Tony Basilio, for people that are listening to these original, Tony Basilio was so fantastic at Googling things. Mm-hmm. I would mention a name. He especially loved buildings, and then if I mentioned the name of a particular wrestler or whatever, he would go and look up the information on him while I'm talking about him, and then drop in these really heavy-duty little facts about things. And Leo kind of got me into Googling. So pretty much after this episode, not long after this episode, I got curious about Leo's past, and then I Googled Leo Garibaldi, and by golly, there he was. Him and his father, whose name was Gino, they were one of the, maybe the most, some people say they were the most famous tag team in the history of wrestling. Father and son team.
Whoa.
And I didn't even know that about Leo. And, Leo and I were great friends. I really had a lot of respect for Leo. He was a fantastic booker. Gosh, he had a great booking mind. I learned a heck of a lot working in Florida when Leo was there. Geez, man, and he never really took me aside, and he never taught me anything. He didn't have to. I watched his matches. I watched his finishes. I watched his angles, and I was like, wow, this guy is amazing, and I think it really helped me a lot in my career. So Leo was he was a pretty cute dude too, as a matter of fact, and maybe that's why Mary's got to be up there in age to want to talk about Leo Garibaldi, but Mary, I realized that that once I looked him up, he was known as wrestling's teenage idol from California.
Okay,
Leo Garibaldi.
Okay,
and when I think back about Leo, he's a darn good-looking guy. I could see it, So, one more fact here about that family, is Gino, who was Leo's dad. Gino had 4 brothers, and they all wrestled.
Wow.
One of them was named Chick. One of them was named Tony. One of them was named Joe. And probably the best one in the family, the best wrestler ever in the Garibaldi family, was Ralph Garibaldi.
Ralph.
So, not a great name for a wrestler, and could be he didn't use that name. That guy might have been his legal name. But anyway, a great wrestling family, a great historical wrestling family, the Garibaldis. And Leo, in my opinion, one of the great bookers ever. And in the course of this episode, this number 19, and where I talk about him, I think fans will get the feeling. If you've listened to it, you get the feeling for my respect and my admiration for the guys that Garibaldi could bring into your territory. He just could set territories on fire with the talent that followed him.
All right, there you go. Now from Mary in L.A. to Sam Devine in Yorkville, Tennessee. Sam says, I'm an old-timer from Tennessee that listens to your shows. I recognize 3 names from this Studcast. And again, we're talking about number 19. 3 names from this Studcast that were all stars at one time or another in my state. Red Roberts, Charlie Carr, and Tex Riley. And he says, do you know when or how they died? And I'm assuming, obviously, he knows that they have passed on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these guys were older guys, man. Wow. I watched Red Roberts as a kid. He was bald-headed. One of the first bald-headed wrestlers, as I can recall. And he had tremendous heat. Wow, he was really a great worker, and he got tremendous heat, man. And I don't know when he died. And the guy's name was Sam, I think. Sam, I don't know when Red Roberts died, and I don't know how he died. But the other 2, I really do. And Charlie Carr, I've talked about a lot in Studcast, especially these earlier ones, because Charlie Carr taught me and my brother, my dad, Lester, and half of the great wrestlers that from the 40s and 50s and 60s were under the tutelage of Charlie Carr. And Charlie Carr lived with us for a while in Georgia. And so Charlie Carr, I got a great story about Charlie Carr, and I just want to throw it in here, Dave, and it's a Sputnik Monroe and Charlie Carr story. Sputnik Monroe took Charlie Carr in. Charlie was an older wrestler in the 60s. When I started in 1970, Charlie had just retired. And so Sputnik, in the 60s, Charlie Carr was still wrestling and in Georgia. And Sputnik was one of the top wrestlers in the state of Georgia at that point. And Sputnik took Charlie Carr in and let him live with him. And Charlie was a drinker. Well, so was Sputnik a drinker too sometimes, but Charlie was a big drinker. And when he would get drunk, he got kind of mean. He wanted to fight. He wanted to wrestle, but he really wanted to fight. You weren't very smart if you wanted to even wrestle with Charlie, much less try to get any further than that. But anyway, he's talking to Sputnik's got a little girl that's probably a year old, and she's got a crib. And they get into it in the room where his little girl named Natalie is. And Sputnik's on one side of her cradle, and Charlie's on the other. And Charlie reaches for him, and Sputnik backs off. And Charlie, he talked like that, and he says, "You know, Monroe," he said, "I could kick your ass in Natalie's cradle here and not kick out a slap."
All right.
Sputnik told me that story. I was like, oh boy. Charlie was, when he was drinking, you didn't want to mess with him. Charlie Carr, I don't have the exact year, Sam, that he died, but I hear that he died in a gun accident. He was hunting, and he crawled through a barbed wire fence, and he was hunting with a shotgun, and somehow trying to untangle himself, he shot himself.
Oh, wow.
Pretty bad way to die right there.
So sad, yeah.
And the third one here is a guy named Tex Riley. For wrestling, old-time wrestling fans, Tex Riley was one of the greatest that ever went into the ring. He really, and what a fantastic babyface he was. And just phenomenal in the ring. And I got a taxi cab story I want to tell about Tex Riley. Tex Riley was wrestling for my dad in Georgia, 1965. 64, when we went there, Dad took him because he was one of those old timers that you could have a great match with. Anybody could, and he's going to build your territory. And so Tex had these big cauliflower ears like my grandfather Roy, stuck way out on the side of his head. And one night, and he's a baby face, so, there was somebody on the front row heckling him, and Dad was there at that match, and he saw Tex in the ring getting mad at the guy, right? And the guy was saying these little smart remarks about Tex. Well, he's an older guy at this point, and I guess the guy just, he didn't like the fact that Tex was in the ring. Anyway, he kept saying things, and then finally he screams out real loud. The action's kind of died down the ring. Riley's got a headlock or whatever it is, and the guy screams real loud, and he goes, "You look like your ears make you look like a taxi cab with both back doors open driving down the street."
Oh my God! All right. Yeah.
And my dad's in the back of the building, and he goes, "Oh no!" And boy, Tex just shot out onto the floor, man. I mean, right in the guy's face, and Dad's thinking, "Oh God, don't hit him, please don't hit him." And he jerked the guy up, and I don't know what he was going to do with him. Dad doesn't either. When he told me the story, he said, but he reached and grabbed him by the shoulders, and he jerked him out of his chair, and he was sitting in a wheelchair.
Oh wow!
Make it even worse.
Oh
right?
My God! Yeah. Oh, holy cow!
And so now he's got to sit him back down and kind of apologize. Oh boy! So and then the sad part about this whole story really is that 1965, Tex came there with Dad in 1964. He's still there wrestling with him in 1965, and he died in the ring of a heart attack in Savannah, Georgia, 1965.
Oh my goodness!
And what was crazy? There's another part of this story that is really, really different. Really, it's hard to believe that it could happen. But about 7 years after that, Ray Gunkel died in the same city, in the same way, in the ring. Just after the ring. He's in the dressing room when he died. But Ray Gunkel's death, and he was part owner of the Georgia territory at that point, his death is going to start the famous Atlanta War that people talk about all around the world. If you're talking about big-time wrestling war, the Atlanta War began with the death of Ray Gunkel in Savannah, Georgia, basically in the dressing room, same place that Tex Riley had died same way 7 years earlier.
Holy cow. Okay. Man, that's interesting. All right. And you always come up with another story about a story and another story about that story. So that's incredible. All right, there you go, folks. It's another Southeastern Rewind. Tell me more, where the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller answered 5 questions about Studcast number 19, which is now on Ron's new home on YouTube. And remember to find Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders on when the greatest stories in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube. And be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind. For Ron Fuller, I'm David Sommers. We'll be back soon with another Tell Me More.